Good morning, grade 11.
Good morning, miss.
I'll take the attendance first and then we'll start. Please, if you hear your name, say yes or present or whatever. Let's start. Baghdadi,
Yes. Yes.
Walid, yes, I heard you. I'm just writing down.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Gizi,
ايوه
Hassan Gouda.
Yes.
Okay. Ruhaym. No. Is Ruhaym here?
سامعني
يس
بس؟
مس
Yes, okay. Tawakkul. Okay. Osama.
الو بس سامعني؟
يس
بس
Yes. Who's saying miss? Gouda? Hmm.
فكرت سمعتنيش.
No, I heard you. لا, I heard you. Osama's not here? Okay. Ryan,
يس مس يس
you're here?
ظهر
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Tedros,
Yes, miss.
Yasin,
Yes.
Yahya. No? Okay. Yusuf, Awad.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Sahrawi,
Yes, miss.
Alia. Abdurrahman, is Alia here?
Yes.
Kunuz, I never called your name. This was Alia. Wait.
هي هنا
Wait.
دخلت وطلعت باين.
طيب. Abdurrahman, please tell Alia to join in, either from the same computer as yours, or she can sign in with her own account. Ganna Gouda.
Yes.
Okay. Haya,
Yes.
Jana, Osman,
Yes.
Garayhi. Garayhi is not here. Okay. Kunuz, you're here. Layan. No? Okay. Lulua. No? Okay. Kiara. Mariam.
Yes, miss.
Martina. No? Okay. Noreen. Yasmin Sa'a. Yasmin Said.
Yes.
Okay. Ganna Tamer. No? And finally, Hala.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Now, let's start with the lesson. Last week, we started talking about ancient Egypt, and we already said that the location, the geography, okay? We talked about the division of the Nile, dividing it into the Blue Nile and the White Nile. We said that the soil left over from the floodings was known as Kemet. We also discussed that the area that looks like a fan is called delta. And we said that Egypt at that time, or ancient Egypt, was isolated. Can anyone remember the advantages of isolation? What was good about being isolated geographically?
بس ممكن تدخلي ليات.
Okay. Grade 11. Do you remember why was it good being isolated, geographically isolated, or what's the advantage of being geographically isolated? Grade 11, can you hear me?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
I asked the question twice and yet no one answered.
السؤال.
They were able to make their own culture, a unique culture.
If they were able to make a new culture. What else? Something before it. What's good about being isolated, geographically isolated?
They were protected from invasions.
Yes, excellent. They're protected from invasions. Okay, what's the disadvantages about being geographically isolated? If no one can enter or
Trading.
creating a. It's good that no one can enter or come near
Trading.
to you. Why? Oh, trading. Okay, yes, excellent. Thank you. The advantage is that they're protected from invasions and enemies. But at the same time, this is considered as a disadvantage because they cannot easily leave their location. They cannot trade, they cannot share anything with the surroundings. Okay? Now, today's part. How did they form? Now, remember we said that when the Nile flooded, just like the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers in Mesopotamia, it left the Kemet or the black soil. When this land was ready for farming, the Egyptians planted wheat, barley, and flax seeds. These seeds needed fertile, strong soil and warm weather that was found at that time in Egypt. During the dry seasons, the farmers irrigated their crops by using scoops and from basins. What are scoops and basins? This is it. Okay, during dry seasons, they would go construct wooden pieces into forming a lever. They would pull it with these buckets or
بس الصوت
containers.
مساعد بيقطع.
Can you hear me?
الصوت بيقطع بس معرفش لو من عندي ولا من عند حضرتك.
The rest of
لا
you
هو
تقول
بيقطع
إيه؟
فعلا كتير أوي.
طيب, do you want me to repeat?
Yeah. صوت
بيقطع.
مش عارف.
Did you hear the part about farming? About what did they grow? What crops did they grow? Okay. This was during the flooding season. When it was flooded, there was enough water that entered the whole land. They did not need to go take water from another place. The lands were filled with water and silt. So all what they had to do is to plant the seeds. What were the things that they grew or the crops? It was wheat, barley, and flax seeds. Is it clear during the flooding season? Now, during the dry season, when the Nile did not flood, when there was no enough water, they would form these. They would start making places for wooden levers. They would attach these levers with basins or containers. They would pull it just like a seesaw. It would go down. They would take water, put it here in the canal or in the wooden shaped canal so that it reaches the farming land. Okay? Later on, this was called a shadoof. They started permanently fixing these devices on the edges near the water so that when it's the dry season, they would use it. So this instrument was known, or this tool was known as a shadoof. It was a bucket attached to a pole. This pole could go up and down. When it goes down, it's filled with water and there's a weight. Okay, they use the rope to pull the weight so they can pull the bucket back up again. And this is how they farmed during the dry season. Okay, now Egyptians used papyrus. This is a plant that grew along the Nile. They used the papyrus to weave ropes, and they used it to make sandals, baskets, and river rafts. Later on, they discovered that when they soaked these strips of papyrus or plants in water, and then they would put them together, go over them or make them flat and stick them next to each other, leave them to dry out in the sun, they would form sheets of paper. When they started forming these sheets of paper, they got the idea, just like the Mesopotamians and all the ancient cultures from before, to keep record of what's going on with them. So, like the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians developed their own system of writing. First, by using symbols to represent words, just like the Mesopotamians, the whole picture at first represented one word. But later on, they decided that it's better to develop a symbol that represents one sound only, just like our alphabets. Each letter has a sound, and we can make up letters to form words. This combination of using the pictures and the sounds created the first complex system of writing that was known as the hieroglyphics. Okay? Few ancient Egyptians could read or write hieroglyphics. The first ones who could read and write were, of course, the men. In order to know how to read and write, as young boys, they had to go to special schools to train them, and they worked as scribes. Scribes, these are men that keep record of the history of the empire. This is their job. They keep records, whether just like in the Mesopotamian, on pieces of stones, or in the ancient Egyptian empire on papyrus papers. Okay? Unlike the Mesopotamian people who wrote on clay tablets, the Egyptian scribes wrote or painted on papyrus. Now, what do you think is better? Mesopotamians writing on clay tablets, which are the cuneiforms, or the Egyptians writing on papyrus, which is the reed paper? Which one do you think is better, the cuneiform or the papyrus? You need to tell me why. Grade
Yes, can you
11,
say it
can you
again?
hear me?
Can you say it again?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear the question?
I think the papyrus is better.
You think the papyrus is better. Okay, think of a reason. What about the rest? Walid, Gizi, Layan, Hala,
لا أيوة مش
Ganna, Kunuz.
بس can you
Yes.
ask again?
I
You said
can't hear you,
papyrus was
Gizi.
easier to make?
Can you repeat the question?
Can I repeat the question? We were talking about the writing system, and we said that in Mesopotamia, they wrote on clay tablets, which is the cuneiforms. In Egypt, or in ancient Egypt, they wrote on papyrus, which is the reed paper.
Mm,
My question was, which one is better and why?
papyrus,
Think of a reason and tell me why.
because it's easier to write on than stone tablets.
It's easier to write on, but they wrote on the stone tablets when it was clay, not when it was solid. So
آه.
it's
بس
easy. It's
أعتقد
considered easy.
Because it's a more modern way.
How?
Because clay tablets can be easily destroyed.
True.
Papyrus conserves the writing.
Okay. Any other
They
reasons?
had, they had a lot of papyrus going on the river.
Hassan, can you raise your voice?
They had a lot of papyrus around Nile River, so they used it instead of clay.
Mesopotamians had a lot of clay. I'm not saying which one had more. I'm saying which is a better method to keep as recording of history, the clay tablets or the papyrus.
I agree with Yasin.
Hmm? You agree with Yasin, which is papyrus?
Yes.
Who thinks clay tablets are better?
هنا
Why, Yahya?
بس because it stay longer time أعتقد مش
Mhm.
هتتمسح بسهولة.
And
بس
how would it get erased from papyrus?
ممكن يضيع بقى.
Okay.
بسم الله.
Yes, Gizi.
هو البابايرس كان يعني ممكن يتحرق كده دامج، بس الكلي تابلتس ديورابل
مش
يعني.
هيحصل لها حاجة.
Mhm. Okay. All of your
البابايرس
answers
مور
are
بورتابل.
all of your answers are half correct and half wrong. Now, you're
تمام.
correct because both clay tablets and papyrus last for they're durable. Both of them are durable. And you're all half wrong because it depends on the method of reservation. If the Mesopotamians did not reserve the clay tablets in a safe place and they left it outside or opened, the writings on the clay tablets can go away from weathering, for example, and erosion, and they can get destroyed if, for example, earthquakes happened. Yani, they can be easily destroyed if they're not reserved. Same thing goes for papyrus. If they're not carefully reserved, they can get easily destroyed. So both of them are considered as a good source of keeping records depending on how did these people reserve their history records. Ancient Egyptians used to put these papyrus records with the pharaohs inside the tombs. Sometimes they would put them inside the jars as hidden messages. This is why we found more on ancient Egyptian than on Mesopotamians. Clear? So both of them are considered as a good way of recording history. It depends on the way the people reserved them. If you're talking about destruction, both of them can be destroyed. Papyrus can be destroyed by water or fire, like Gizi said. And at the same time, tablets can be destroyed by if they fell down and they broke, or weathering and erosion. Clear?
clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the villages along the Nile River, remember we said that the people settled around or along the Nile River because of the fertile soil and the water. So they started developing into villages. These villages traded with one another. And then they started trading with the area south that was known as Nubia and Mesopotamia and other places that are nearby the Egyptian borders. Now, after they started trading, the villages started to grow bit by bit. So, just like any time in history, you start feeding yourself, you start settling first, and then you start to find food and shelter. You start trading, everything is settled. What do you need next? You need a government. You need people to control and to organize your life. So, Egyptians wanted a government. They wanted to have a routine, settled life, just like they fixed the farming and the trading. Now, the government was needed. Why? They wanted the government to control or to overlook or to supervise the construction of the irrigation systems and dams. It has become a very big responsibility on the Egyptians themselves, so they needed someone responsible to take over. So if I ask you why was government needed during the ancient Egyptian empire, number one, it's the construction of the irrigation systems and dams to supervise the construction of irrigation systems and dams. Two, to develop a process for storing and distributing the grains during the famines. And three, to settle conflicts over land ownership. They settled around the Nile River, as we said. They started forming small villages. At the same time, they had two seasons, the flooding season and the dry season. The flooding season, they had to control the dams and the overflow of water. The dry seasons, they faced famines or long, dry, hunger seasons, so they had to control what they cultivated to store and to distribute. So the tasks that needed for survival were increasing. They couldn't do it separately, they couldn't do it family by family. They needed someone in charge to give them the same instructions and the same rules for everyone living along the Nile River Valley. And the last but most important problem was to settle the conflicts over land. Just like Mesopotamia, as they started increasing in size, some of them were more powerful than the others. So they started to fight over the land ownership. This piece of land is mine. This piece of land belongs to my tribe. This piece of land belongs to my group. So they started having conflicts. So there were three reasons why the Egyptians needed the government after the settlements, the farmings, and the trade. They needed the government, one, to oversee the construction of the irrigation systems and dams, two, to develop a system for storing and distributing the grains, and three, to settle the conflicts over the land ownership. Do you all understand why did they need the government? Grade
Yes,
11.
miss.
Okay. So by time, the villages started to join together, forming small kingdoms. And these kingdoms were ruled by kings. Egypt was divided into Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Now, please note, I'm pretty sure most of you know this info, but you need to remember it again. When I say Upper Egypt, it's the part that goes south. When I say Lower Egypt, this is the one that is towards the north, which is the delta. Okay, it's the opposite. Do not say Lower Egypt is the one that goes to Sudan and Upper Egypt is the one that goes to the delta and the Mediterranean. This is wrong. It's the opposite way. Clear? Upper and Lower Egypt? Now, the last part of our lesson is Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt developed a little bit faster than Lower Egypt when it came to kingdoms and kings. So, the first king of Upper Egypt was known as Narmer. Around 3100 BC, his army conquered Lower Egypt and he married one of their princesses, which unified the kingdoms. So Narmer came from Upper Egypt, okay? But he married a princess from Lower Egypt, thus uniting both Lower and Upper Egypt to form one big kingdom. Narmer established a new capital at Memphis, okay? And he governed both sides of the kingdoms from the new capital. Narmer's kingdom lasted for as long as he ruled, and it also lasted a long time after his death. When he died, the rule was passed on as a hierarchy from the father to the son to the grandson of the same family. Okay? So, unlike Mesopotamia, in Mesopotamia, each area was ruled by a certain person, and when this person took over after a war or a conflict, the area belonged to him. In Egypt, it was different. Narmer was the first one to rule and the first one to unify both kingdoms. Okay? When he started ruling, from the moment he started ruling until a long period of time, the system of rule was a hierarchy or a dynasty, which means that the rule is in one family and it goes on from father to son to grandson. Is it clear? So from 3100 BC to 332 BC, Egyptians were ruled by a series of 30 dynasties. Okay, there were 30 families that ruled ancient Egypt. They're divided into three time zones or three periods: the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. Okay, this is where we're going to stop for today. Now, for tomorrow, I need you to make a certain small task. You need to compare between Egypt and Mesopotamia in terms of geography, number one, which is the location, in terms of record keeping, which is number two, and finally, number three, in terms of government and rulers. We discussed the 3 points now
بس
in the
location
session.
وايه؟
Hmm?
location وايه تاني؟
I'll post the note after we finish the session, but for now, just write it down. In terms of location, this is number one. Where is the location? Two, in terms of record keeping. And three, in terms of government and rulers. The easiest way to do this is using a Venn diagram. Do you all know what's a Venn diagram? Grade 11.
ايه ده؟
Yes, miss.
Do you all know what's a Venn diagram?
Yes.
The two circles overlapping each other and there's one common area in between. This is the easiest way to do the homework. You will write Mesopotamia on one circle, ancient Egypt on another circle. You will write the differences on the sides and the common things in the area that is overlapped by each kingdom. Clear? If you want to do it using a table,
Yes.
compare and contrast using a table, similarities and differences, this is also fine. Clear? Since we do not have a session tomorrow, you will have the homework to do. I will put, you can do it today and you can submit it tomorrow because our session is on Wednesday since Tuesday is off. So you have up until tomorrow night. It won't take 10 minutes, okay? And
Okay.
starting this
Yes.
week, we will start a new system of sending the assignments and homework through SMS. It won't be emails anymore, okay? So when you finish the assignment, you can either do it on the computer or your phones and send it right away. Or if you're going to do it by your hand, draw it or write it down in your notebook, you can take a picture and attach it and send it. Okay, as long as it's on SMS. The homework post will be posted right after the session now on SMS. Clear?
Yes.
Do you have any questions concerning today's session?
No, thank you.
Do you understand all about the farming, the shadoof, the government, and the rulers?
Yes.
Okay. I'll see you next session then. Thank you.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.